Milo ran along the jagged edge of the floating city, the wind tearing at his clothes. Smoke from the lower ruins mixed with clouds, and the distant sun barely lit the horizon. Kalara had once been full of life, a world where dragons flew freely and cities sparkled with energy drawn from their fire. Now it was dying. The oceans below were black with ash, the air thick with dust, and every day felt like the world was one step closer to collapse. He glanced down at the streets beneath, where scavengers darted between broken buildings like ants. Milo's own life had been built on scavenging scraps, but he wasn't like the others. He didn't just survive. He dreamed. He remembered the stories his father told him as a boy, tales of dragons whose fire could heal the world, whose wings could lift entire cities. Most people dismissed them as myths, but Milo knew better. He had to. At the edge of the city, an ancient mountain jutted skyward, cracked and scarred, glowing faintly with the heat of the world's core. Milo's gaze hardened. He had seen it in his dreams and in stolen maps, the hidden sanctum where the last dragon slept, chained in crystal. Zirith, the only dragon left alive. Milo's heart raced at the thought. If the dragon could be awakened, perhaps Kalara could survive. He crouched low and leaped to a narrow bridge of stone that hung between floating spires. The bridge creaked under his weight and Milo froze for a second, listening. From below, the groan of metal and stone warned him that he wasn't alone. Raiders from the sky slums, mercenaries for anyone willing to pay, had spotted him before. They would try to stop anyone daring enough to reach the mountains. Milo didn't hesitate. He ran, pushing his legs harder, feeling the chill of fear twist in his stomach. By the time he reached the edge of the mountain, the sun was gone. Shadows swallowed the cracks in the stone, and the air smelled of sulfur and old fire. The entrance to Ziritha's sanctum was a jagged hole in the rock, faintly glowing with the dragon's last ember. Milo paused. His pulse pounded. One wrong step and he could fall to his death, or worse, be discovered by the hunters who had started following him. He whispered to himself, a promise. I can do this. I have to do this. Milo slid down the rocky slope, using his hands to catch himself on uneven stone. His mind raced with the stories he'd memorized, every fragment of the ancient songs, every note that might awaken the dragon. He had never sung in front of anyone, but if a human voice could bring a dragon back to life, then he had to try. He had no choice. The world depended on it. Inside the sanctum, it was dark, save for the faint glow of cracked crystal. Milo crept forward, each step careful, silent. He could hear it before he saw it, the low, wheezing growl of Zirith, heavy and pained. The dragon's massive form was coiled within the crystal cage, scales dull and broken. Its eyes opened slowly, dim pools of ancient sorrow. Milo froze, stunned. The dragon was more immense than he had imagined, each breath sending sparks of dying fire into the air. Zirith hissed, a sound that shook the walls of the cavern. Milo swallowed his fear. I want to help you, he said softly, though he knew the dragon might not understand him. He stepped closer, feeling the heat radiating off the creature, small yet unbearable. His hands trembled, but his eyes never left the dragon's. I won't fail. I promise. The dragon's gaze seemed to pierce through him, a mix of pain, distrust, and something else, curiosity, maybe hope. Milo's heart thudded harder. He had read about this in the old texts. Only a human could awaken a dragon now. Only a human could sing the forbidden song. But the song was dangerous. Misstep one note, and Milo could be burned alive, his voice ripped apart by the dragon's own energy. The risk was enormous, but Milo didn't hesitate. He had never felt more alive. He took a deep breath and whispered the first note of the song. The crystal cage trembled slightly. Sparks flickered across Ziritha's scales. The dragon's wheezing growl turned into a low, resonant hum, as if it were testing Milo. Milo's hands shook, his voice strained, but he held the note. The dragon responded with a shiver of fire along its spine. Milo's heart leaped. He was doing it. He was connecting. Suddenly, a sound from the entrance made him spin around, metal scraping against stone. Raiders. They had followed him all the way here. Milo realized there was no time to hesitate. Ziritha's cage was unstable. If the raiders tried to capture the dragon now, it could collapse, killing them both. He had to act fast. He turned back to the dragon and took another deep breath, preparing to sing louder to push the song further. Ziritha's eyes locked onto him, massive, glowing with fading fire. Milo could feel the weight of centuries pressing down on him, the weight of a dying world and a dragon waiting for a human to save it. He swallowed the fear, tightened his throat, and began the next notes, louder, sharper, clearer. The air vibrated. Sparks flew. The dragon twitched, almost like it was remembering its own strength. Outside, the sound of the raiders grew closer. Milo knew the sanctum wouldn't hold long. Every second counted. He had started something bigger than himself. A human challenging the impossible, trying to bring life back to a world that had almost forgotten hope. And then, deep inside the cavern, a faint rumble answered him. Xerath stirred. Just a little. Milo's heart pounded. He had no idea if the dragon could fully awaken, but he knew this. The fight had begun and it would take everything he had to succeed. Milo ran from the sanctum, heart still racing from the dragon's faint stir. The raiders hadn't entered yet, but their footsteps echoed from the cliffs below. He didn't look back. Every step was dangerous. The crumbling rocks, the gaps between floating spires, the sudden gusts of wind that could throw him off balance. Yet Milo felt a strange excitement. For the first time he was no longer just surviving. He was acting, fighting for something greater than himself. He landed on a narrow ledge, the wind whipping his hair. Tessa's drone buzzed beside him, a small metal bird she had given him for scouting. Milo, hurry. They're closing in faster than I thought, her voice crackled through the communicator. Milo clenched his jaw. He had to learn the song, the full melody, before the dragon could be truly awakened. And the syndicate, the raiders, wouldn't wait. The ruined library of Orinth was miles away, perched on another floating island. Milo leaped between fragments, using his small frame and agility to dodge falling debris and weak structures. Clouds swallowed him, thunder rolling above. He remembered his father's words, a human can do more than fear allows. A human can create hope where none exists. He repeated them to himself like a mantra, pushing his fear aside. By the time he reached the library, Milo was gasping. The ruins were silent, cracked walls stretching toward the gray sky. Inside, the faint glow of bioluminescent plants offered weak light. Dust and decay filled the air. He carefully unrolled ancient maps, scanning symbols he could barely read. Among the crumbling pages he found fragments of the forbidden song. It was more than music, it was a pattern of vibration, each note tied to a frequency that could resonate with a dragon's biofire. Milo's eyes widened. If he misplayed it, Xerath could collapse, or worse, he could be struck by the feedback himself. He started practicing. First, the small notes. He hummed, whispered, and sometimes cried from strain. Each attempt made his throat raw, his chest burn. Sparks of energy flickered from nearby crystals as he tested the vibrations. Each failure was dangerous, but Milo refused to stop. He reminded himself, one human, one voice, one chance. If he failed, Kalara would die. Hours passed. Milo's voice grew stronger, more precise. The pattern of the song began to flow naturally through him. Sweat dripped down his face. A sudden roar outside startled him. Through broken windows he saw the Syndicate's skyhounds, mechanized predators built to hunt dragons. They hovered silently, scanning for movement. Milo's blood froze. One wrong move and they would find him, and Xerath would be lost before the dragon even awoke. Milo ducked behind a stack of ruined shelves. He needed a plan. Then he remembered the secondary fragments in Tessa's drone storage. He pulled the device from his pack, adjusting it to amplify his song. If he projected the vibrations through the drone, he could test higher frequencies safely. His hands shook, but he connected the wires and powered it on. The small metal drone quivered and then emitted a faint hum. Milo took a deep breath. He sang again, louder this time, letting the drone carry the vibrations. Sparks jumped from the crystals in response. Milo felt a shock run through his body, a warning, but he held the note. Slowly, he noticed something extraordinary. The vibrations harmonized with the crystals, resonating like a distant heartbeat. A small fire ignited in the corner, flickering gently but steadily. Milo's eyes widened. It worked. Even a small note could create resonance. If scaled, it could awaken Xerath. The skyhounds outside sensed the activity. The ground shook faintly as their engines adjusted, searching for the source. Milo's stomach knotted with fear, but he refused to flee. He had one chance and he would not waste it. With every fiber of his being, he pushed through the pain, singing stronger, shaping the song into the pattern he had memorized from the fragments. Sparks leapt across the floor and a low hum vibrated the walls. Milo felt like his chest would burst, but he held on. Then the unexpected happened. A wall collapsed under the vibrations, revealing a hidden chamber. Inside, Milo saw a crystal formation unlike any he had seen before, pulsing, alive, almost as if it were waiting for the song. His heart raced. He realized this might be the key to amplifying the melody to reach Xerath's biofire. But the chamber was unstable. A single misstep could trap him under falling rock, or worse, ruin the delicate resonance he had just begun to control. Milo swallowed hard and stepped carefully into the chamber. His voice wavered but never stopped. The crystals responded, vibrating in perfect sync with the song. For a moment, Milo felt like he was no longer alone, like he and Xerath were connected across miles, the dragon sensing his determination. A tear slid down Milo's cheek. He wasn't just a boy anymore. He was a human fighting impossible odds, standing against death itself. Suddenly, the sound of the skyhounds outside grew louder, closer. Milo glanced at the door, his escape route, and then back at the crystals. He had no time. He had to finish this trial before the raiders found him. Summoning every ounce of courage, Milo pushed his voice higher, sharper, feeling the vibrations climb through him like fire. Sparks flew across the chamber, the crystals glowing brighter. Milo's chest ached, his throat burned, but he didn't stop. Outside, the skyhounds landed, mechanical claws screeching against stone. The syndicate was here and Milo was trapped. He realized the trial wasn't over, it had only just begun. He had discovered the power, but now he would have to survive long enough to use it on Xerath. Every step, every note, every breath would be a fight. And Milo knew one thing clearly, he would not fail. Milo's heart pounded as the syndicate skyhounds circled the ruins above. Their sensors glowed red in the dim light, scanning for any sign of movement. He pressed himself against the wall of the hidden crystal chamber, sweat dripping from his forehead. The melody of the forbidden song still hummed in his mind, vibrating through his chest like a living thing. Every note he had practiced, every failure he had endured, all led to this moment. He couldn't afford to panic. One mistake, one misstep, and the syndicate would capture him. Worse, Xerath could remain trapped, dying helpless. Milo took a deep breath, trying to calm the rapid fire in his chest. He whispered to himself, "I am the human who can do this. I will not fail." The chamber's crystals pulsed softly, responding to the lingering notes of his song. Milo realized something important. The vibrations didn't just resonate with the crystals, they amplified them. The hidden chamber itself could act as a resonance chamber, magnifying the song across miles. Xerath might feel it, might respond, but Milo had no time to test. The syndicate was moving closer, their engines scraping the stone, metal claws screeching. Milo gritted his teeth and activated Tessa's drone. The little mechanical bird hovered beside him, wires trailing like veins. Milo adjusted the frequencies, carefully syncing them with the notes in his head. Then he began singing again, hesitantly at first, feeling the vibrations creep through him, tremble along the walls and pulse through the crystals. Sparks flickered. The chamber hummed like a giant heartbeat. Milo could feel Xerath's presence answering him in some invisible way, a faint tug in the air, a heat that made the hairs on his arms stand on end. The skyhounds screeched above. One landed just outside the entrance, sensors scanning, claws clicking. Milo's stomach knotted, but he didn't stop. He raised his voice louder, letting the song flow freely, feeling the pain in his chest and throat. The vibrations surged, and for the first time, Milo felt a real connection, a bridge between human and dragon. Xerath was stirring, even if only slightly. Milo's heart leapt. But then a sudden tremor rocked the chamber. A section of the ceiling cracked, shards of stone falling toward him. Milo ducked, barely avoiding them. The drone screeched in protest, sparks flying as wires twisted. Panic surged, but he refused to stop singing. He could not let fear break him now. Every vibration, every note mattered. Xerath's life depended on it. From outside he could hear the syndicate's voice distorted through comms. Locate the human. Activate containment. Milo knew they would breach the chamber soon. The crystal walls couldn't hold much longer. He needed a plan and he needed it fast. Then a thought struck him. If he could focus the drone's vibrations through the largest crystal cluster, he could create a directional pulse. The sound could reach Xerath directly, bypassing the syndicate sensors. It was risky. Too high a frequency and the drone could explode, taking Milo's voice with it. Too low and the dragon wouldn't feel a thing. Milo bit his lip, calculating the frequencies in his head. His hands moved with precision, adjusting the drone, twisting dials, plugging wires, testing tones. A skyhound clawed at the chamber entrance. Milo's pulse spiked. No time. Now or never. He took a deep breath and sang with all his strength, the drone amplifying every note. The crystals pulsed violently, energy surging through the chamber like lightning in slow motion. Milo felt his chest burn, his voice rasping. Sparks leapt from the drone and the crystal floor, and for a terrifying second he thought it might all collapse. Then a low roar echoed from the distance, deep and resonant. Milo froze. His heart raced. It was Zirith. The dragon had felt him. He could feel it now, a faint tremor in the air, a warmth that hadn't been there before. Milo's hands shook, but he didn't stop singing. Every note, every vibration, every ounce of courage poured into the melody. Zirith answered with another roar, more powerful, shaking the mountains around them. The chamber trembled violently. Rocks fell, dust filled the air, and Milo nearly fell. Yet the dragon's response continued to grow. The resonance amplified through the crystals, bouncing across the ruins and carrying toward the sanctum. Milo's voice cracked, his throat burned, but he pushed through. Fear no longer controlled him, only determination did. Suddenly, the Syndicate Skyhound breached the chamber. Milo dodged the metallic claws, slamming the drone toward the cluster of crystals. The energy amplified, a wave of vibration rushing outward like a sonic boom. The Skyhound shrieked, sparks flying from its sensors. Milo staggered, almost collapsing, but his eyes locked onto the faint heat in the distance, the sanctum. Zirith was moving, slowly responding to the song, struggling against his chains. Milo's lips trembled, voice raw, but he continued. He felt something in the air, a current of power, almost alive. The forbidden song was working. It was working. And yet, the danger was far from over. The Syndicate would not give up, and he was still hundreds of miles from the dragon. Every second counted. As the chamber shook around him, Milo realized the truth. He was not just a boy singing. He was a human standing against impossible odds, facing death itself to save a creature older and more powerful than anything else alive. And for the first time he understood what it meant to be extraordinary, not because he was strong but because he refused to quit. The vibration surged once more. Zirith's roar echoed again, closer now, a deep, powerful response that rattled Milo's very bones. The dragon was awakening. The Syndicate was panicking. Milo's heart leapt, but he knew this was only the beginning. The first trial had been survived, but the real danger, the real test, lay ahead. And Milo had to be ready. Milo ran through the jagged corridors of the ruined floating islands, the wind tearing at his clothes. The song still hummed in his chest, vibrating with every beat of his heart. Zirith's response had been stronger now, more than a faint tremor. The dragon was awake, struggling against centuries of confinement. But the Syndicate was relentless. Skyhounds and mechanical patrols were closing in from every direction. Milo had no time to rest, no time to falter. He glanced over the edge of a broken spire. Below, the sanctum's crystal cage glowed faintly, shaking as Zirith strained against his bindings. Sparks flew from cracks in the walls, and the faint rumble of fire echoed through the air. Milo swallowed hard. This was the moment that mattered. If Zirith fell back into weakness, or if the Syndicate captured him, Kalara's last hope would be gone. He had to act, and fast. Milo adjusted Tessa's drone, now rigged to act as both a resonance amplifier and a distraction. The small metal bird hovered near the edge of the sanctum entrance, projecting the notes of the forbidden song outward. Milo's voice carried with it, high and piercing, filling the air with vibrations that made the very stone quiver. Sparks flew from the crystal walls, and the dragon's roar answered him, low and deep, shaking the mountains. Milo felt it in his chest, the connection, the life force of Zirith moving through him. The Syndicate Skyhounds landed on the cliffs, claws scraping against rock. Their sensors flared red. Milo's stomach twisted, but he did not hesitate. He pushed the song harder, letting every note and every vibration flow from him through the drone into the dragon. The air itself seemed alive, vibrating in unison with his voice. Milo's chest burned, his throat rasping, but he refused to stop. He could feel Zirith's strength growing with every note. A skyhound leaped at him, claws extended. Milo dodged, rolling over the edge of a floating stone fragment. Sparks flew as the drone's projection struck the mechanical hunter, disrupting its circuits. Milo's pulse raced, fear and adrenaline mixing. Every second mattered. He had to reach Zirith before the dragon's cage collapsed or before the Syndicate could interfere. He sprinted across the broken spire, leaping from one fragment to another. The wind howled and a storm of ash swirled around him. The sanctum was closer now, the crystal cage vibrating violently as Zirith strained, smoke curling from his nostrils. Milo shouted the final notes, his voice raw and trembling. The air rippled with energy. Sparks shot across the sanctum as the dragon roared louder than anything Milo had ever heard. Zirith's wings unfurled for the first time in centuries, massive and powerful, shaking the ground below. Milo grabbed onto a jagged rock as the dragon thrashed, testing his strength. The human voice and the dragon's response intertwined, a perfect harmony of courage and power. Milo felt the heat of Ziritha's fire wash over him, a reminder of both danger and life. Then a wave of energy surged through the sanctum. The crystal cage cracked, splintering under the dragon's growing power. Milo felt himself lifted by the vibration, nearly thrown off balance. He clung to the edge of a floating rock, shouting the final notes with every ounce of strength. Sparks and flames danced across the chamber, reflecting off the walls. Ziritha's roar reached a peak, a sound so immense that it echoed across the floating islands, rattling debris and shaking the clouds. The Syndicate's skyhounds screeched, engines failing under the shockwave of sound. The hunters scrambled, claws slipping on unstable surfaces. Milo felt a surge of hope. This was working. The dragon was breaking free. The last vestiges of fear in Milo's chest transformed into determination. He was not just a boy, he was the human who dared to stand against impossible odds. Zirith leapt, wings snapping open, the fire in his throat igniting a wave of molten energy that shot toward the sky. Milo's song guided it, amplifying the dragon's strength, merging human courage with dragon power. The floating island shook violently. Debris flew past Milo as he clung on, but his focus never wavered. Every note mattered. Every breath mattered. The dragon's chains shattered. Crystal shards flew in every direction. Milo felt the rush of energy wash over him. Zirith rose fully, wings spreading wide, flames licking the clouds. The Syndicate screamed in panic, fleeing as the dragon unleashed a torrent of fire and raw power. Milo's voice cracked one final time, merging with Ziritha's roar in a perfect crescendo. It was deafening. It was beautiful. It was life itself asserting itself against death. As the dust settled, Milo dropped to one knee, chest heaving. Zirith hovered above him, enormous and alive, flames reflecting in his deep eyes. Milo reached out, trembling, and the dragon lowered his massive head. For a moment there was silence. Then Zirith exhaled gently, a puff of warm, golden smoke that washed over Milo like a blessing. Milo laughed through tears. He had done it. He had awakened the last dragon. The Syndicate was gone, defeated not by weapons, but by human courage, ingenuity, and determination. The world had shifted in a single act of bravery. Milo felt exhausted, alive, and more human than ever. But even as Zirith hovered above, wings spread wide, Milo knew the challenge was far from over. The world was still fragile, Kalara still wounded. And there were more dangers waiting beyond the horizon. Yet Milo smiled, feeling the weight of hope settle in his chest. He had taken the impossible and made it possible. And somewhere deep inside, the dragon's eyes glimmered with understanding. Milo had not just awakened Zirith. He had reminded the world what humans could do when they refused to give up. Milo stumbled onto a floating ledge, lungs burning, sweat soaking his clothes. Zirith hovered above him, massive wings stretching across the sky, flames licking the clouds, illuminating the shattered ruins of the sanctum. Milo's hands shook as he looked at the dragon, his chest still echoing with the resonance of their song. It had worked. Zirith was awake, alive, stronger than he had been in centuries. But the world around them was still fragile. Floating islands hung by threads of rock and energy, some collapsing, others tilted precariously. Below, the oceans churned black and lifeless. Milo knew awakening the dragon had been only the first step. The planet needed more than fire, it needed life. And he had no time to hesitate. He climbed onto a jagged spire, catching his breath, and looked at Zirith. The dragon tilted his head, massive eyes glowing with a golden warmth. Milo swallowed hard. "We have to save the world," he whispered, voice shaking. "We can't stop now. Not after everything." Ziritha's wings flexed as if understanding, and a deep, rumbling roar answered him. Milo grinned, heart pounding. They were a team now, human and dragon, united against impossible odds. The Syndicate was gone, but their destruction remained. Machines littered the floating islands, wreckage of their failed attempt to capture Zirith. Milo scanned the horizon. He could see distant cities, some still flickering with failing energy. If Ziritha's fire could reach the planet's core, perhaps Kalara could heal. But channeling the dragon's power was dangerous. One miscalculation could tear the planet apart. Milo's mind raced, recalling the old maps and texts he had scavenged. He knew the pathway to the core, through tunnels of molten rock and unstable energy channels. And he knew he had to guide Zirith there. "Ready?" he whispered, gripping the edge of the spire. Zirith leaned forward, wings snapping open. The air vibrated as the dragon roared, shaking Milo to his bones. He climbed onto the dragon's massive foreleg, careful not to slip as flames danced below. His fingers burned slightly from the heat, but he held on, eyes locked on the horizon. The world depended on him now. As they soared, Milo directed Zirith, guiding him through collapsing cliffs and narrow gaps. Sparks flew from the dragon's fire as they passed broken structures, and Milo felt the raw power beneath him. Every beat of Zirith's wings carried momentum, every roar sent shockwaves through the air. Milo adjusted the song in his mind, humming the forbidden notes softly, connecting with the dragon's energy. Zirith's strength pulsed with the melody, a living force responding to human courage. Halfway to the core, a massive energy surge erupted from the ground, throwing them off balance. Milo clung desperately as Zirith twisted midair, flames scorching the rocks below. They barely avoided a collapsing energy channel, the molten veins of the planet threatening to swallow them whole. Milo's heart raced, but he didn't falter. Every instinct, every scrap of courage, every lesson from the trials came alive in that moment. He was the human who refused to fail. Finally they reached the core's chamber, a cavern glowing with molten energy, cracks spreading across the rock like veins. Milo climbed onto a protruding rock, raising his arms. "Now Zirith, let's do it together," he shouted. The dragon roared, unleashing a torrent of fire that spiraled toward the core. Milo joined, humming the full melody of the forbidden song. Vibrations surged, energy crackling around them, as human courage and dragon power merged. The planet shook violently. Molten rivers shifted, energy pulses raced, and the floating islands stabilized. Sparks of light erupted across Kalara's oceans, reflecting in waves of golden luminescence. Milo held his voice steady, feeling the resonance ripple through him and through Zirith. They were rewriting the world's heartbeat together. When the energy finally settled, the world was transformed. Floating cities stabilized, glowing with new life. Oceans shimmered with bioluminescent currents. The once dying planet now hummed with vitality. Milo fell to his knees, chest heaving, tears streaming down his face. Zirith landed beside him, massive head lowered, eyes soft and understanding. Milo reached out, touching the dragon's snout. It was real. They had done it. Humanity had acted when all seemed lost. Word of the miracle spread quickly. Humans and survivors of Kalara's cities looked up to the sky in awe. Stories of the boy who awakened the last dragon and saved the planet became legend. Milo did not feel like a legend, he felt exhausted, alive and proud. The courage, intelligence, and determination of one human had changed the course of history. The Syndicate would not return. Their greed and violence had been defeated not by weapons, but by human ingenuity and bravery. Milo had shown the world that humanity could rise to face the impossible, that courage and morality mattered even when the odds were stacked against them. Zirith nudged Milo gently, a deep vibration in his chest that felt like a purr. Milo laughed softly, exhausted but triumphant. "We did it," he whispered. The dragon's wings wrapped partially around him, a silent shield, a promise of protection. Together, human and dragon stood against the dawn of a new era. Milo looked at the horizon, golden light spilling across restored cities, sparkling oceans and skies clear of ash. He felt a surge of hope. The planet had been saved, but more importantly, humans had reminded themselves, and the universe, what they could achieve. Courage, intelligence, morality, determination. It was all real, all alive, embodied in a boy who refused to give up. And as Zirith lifted into the sky, Milo stood on the cliff's edge, watching the dragon soar, knowing that together humans and dragons could face anything. Kalara had been reborn and humanity's fire burned brighter than ever. For Milo, for the last dragon, and for all of Kalara, the impossible had become possible.